Hello, and welcome to the Southeast Capital Call. My name is Khrys. I'm the Capital Formation Manager at Launch Tennessee, your host for this event. I would like to quickly introduce our CEO, Van Tucker, who will be providing a welcome and introducing our keynote speaker, Commissioner Bob Rolfe. Van Tucker joined Launch Tennessee as COO in January 2020 and became interim CEO after the departure of Margaret Dolan in July 2020. Before joining Launch Tennessee, she served as founding CEO of the National Fashion Alliance, a trade organization that raised international awareness of the industry's $6 billion economic impact. Prior to that, Tucker co-founded Avenue Bank as Chief Creative Officer, responsible for their award-winning brand development and several other initiatives. In her time as interim CEO with Launch Tennessee, she has helped us to navigate Launch Tennessee and its partner network through the challenges brought on by COVID-19 and the past year. And we are excited to have her leading the organization into the future. And so with that, I will now pass the mic to her for our formal welcome.
Good morning. I'm Van Tucker, President and CEO of Launch Tennessee. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Southeast Capital Call. Tennessee is one of the few states in the nation that coordinates resources across the state for entrepreneurs and investors. And through collaboration with 12 network partners across the state, we're able to make resources easily accessible and available for both investors and entrepreneurs. Together, we strengthen this entrepreneurial ecosystem, and it helps us sustain economic growth in the entrepreneur world. So thank you for joining us today. I have the pleasure of introducing Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development Commissioner Bob Rolfe. Commissioner Rolfe has led Tennessee's efforts in recruitment and expansion of over 130 international projects, resulting in over 21,000 job commitments to our state and an investment of $6.5 billion. He's placed a particular focus on rural economic development, something that an interest that Launch Tennessee shares. And during his tenure, companies have invested over $7 billion and committed to create almost 30,000 jobs in our rural communities. Commissioner Rolfe has more than 3 decades of experience in business and investment banking. He's a graduate of the Vanderbilt Owen Graduate School of Management, as well as the University of Alabama, which we will not hold against him, but I present to you Commissioner Bob Rolfe. Do we have Commissioner Rolfe?
Hey Van, they were just switching him over. He was on an iPad, and you can't access the stage on the iPad. So Molly was just setting him up on the computer.
Okay. I'll take this as a moment to just remind you, if you have questions, we can put those in the chat room, or there is a special Q&A section on Lunchbowl's platform. So as we go through our agenda today, and we're particularly excited to focus on automotive and mobility today. We've got some exciting speakers to speak about, or to speak to you. But you can put any questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll have someone moderate that so that we can surface those questions to the participants. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
And while we're waiting for Commissioner Rolfe, it's probably to just thank our partners at TenSmart for helping us on this event.
You can just go slideshow.
On wonderful speakers like those here today. And now we have Commissioner Rolfe.
Okay. Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, and I just gave you a wonderful introduction, and you weren't even there to hear it. So
That's okay. And
you're ready to go, Commissioner.
Thank you. And my apologies. We had this set up on my iPad, and I'm told that the iPad may not be the form, so forgive me, but we're going to compromise, and we will be good to go. You want to put the okay. All right. Well, again, Khrys, Van, thank you guys very much. Van, I did hear part of that introduction, and I do appreciate that. And as Van mentioned, my name is Bob Rolfe, and my job is to serve as the leader of our Department of Economic and Community Development here in Nashville. We have about 100 colleagues, and really job one is to recruit great companies to Tennessee. And then job two is to make sure the companies that we have recruited to Tennessee thrive and are successful. And as part of that conversation, make sure that when that company considers a phase 2 expansion, that Tennessee is at the forefront of those conversations. And so not only do we focus on U.S. job recruitment, but we also have a group of 6 talented people across the globe that represent our state across 11 different countries. So we have a couple of FDI representatives, foreign direct investment representatives in Seoul, South Korea, in Tokyo, Japan, and the Asian Rim. And then across Europe, we have representation in another 8 great Western European countries. So what I thought I would do is just give you guys a brief overview, and we'll just use this PowerPoint because it probably does a lot better job of telling the story than listening to me. And so with that, Molly, how are we going to rotate? If you'll just hit the rotate button. Okay, so I hope your screen reflects. This is really what we do at ECD. So think of our shop as a one-stop shop for a company and or the site consultant that's considering a project, in this case in the Southeast. And you'll see here, these are the responsibilities, and our goal again is to make it as business friendly as possible and bring all the solutions to the company. So when a company comes to Tennessee, we do not traffic in where that company should stand up, their facility and or their next location. Our job is to show them all of the assets across Tennessee, and we're talking about 95 counties. And then it's up to the company to start the down selection process of where they would like to consider as they down select. And let me just say this, every project we compete for is very competitive. And it always happens to be Georgia and South Carolina, North Carolina, Northern Alabama. Just seems that there just is no quick win. Everything requires a lot of work and energy, which is great. All right, so this is Governor Lee. He's our 50th governor, sworn in 2 years ago, back in January. And of course, if you don't know about Governor Lee, what you should know is he was a business person all of his adult life. And then a couple of years ago, made the decision that he was going to leave the business community and serve as a public servant. And what you'll see here on the screen, these are the reasons that many companies call Tennessee home. First and foremost, it's the pro-business approach. And then if we take a pro-business approach, everything else should line up very nicely. And I will not go through all of those because they're very self-evident. But I think one that I would like to talk about is the lack of personal income taxes and obviously the low business taxes. Those are 2 of the large drivers when it comes to recruiting companies. And then, of course, the quality of life. This is becoming, I think, just as important. So when I joined the department about 4 years ago, the real narrative is, hey, Tennessee, tell us what you can do from an incentives, a cash incentives standpoint. And we get that. And I would say this to you, starting a new facility, relocating, it's a very expensive proposition, period. And so our incentives, and yes, those are taxpayer dollars, are hopefully used in a prudent manner to help offset some of those costs. Also, if we chose not to provide incentives, I can tell you my first year, the state of Florida defunded their economic development department, and then a year later refunded it because basically companies just stopped looking at that state. Anyway, what you'll see here is this quality of life issue. I think this has become a more important conversation along with the workforce development. And then you can see from a location perspective, you guys probably are very astute at geography, but this is where we reside across our state. You can see that we have 4 or 5 really great metropolitan airports or commercial airports across the state. And then, of course, what's important here is you better have a great interstate system and a great rail system, because that's how you connect businesses, supply chain, and then once your finished goods are shipped out, you need to have that kind of infrastructure. Of course, the great news when it comes to logistics, this is a very important, this is a heat map, and what this reflects basically is 60% of our population is within basically 1 trucking day's distance. And again, we use this data to help recruit companies when it comes to logistics as well as other advanced manufacturing. And we talk about logistics, I think we all know FedEx is probably Tennessee's not only greatest startup story or entrepreneurial story, but it's probably Tennessee's greatest global brand. And I say that to you because FedEx is obviously headquartered in Memphis. About 30,000 Tennesseans work for FedEx, and they have Memphis is the largest port, airport or world port for cargo in the Western Hemisphere. And I think number 2 across the globe behind Hong Kong. But you can see the importance of distribution, third-party logistics, and what it means to our economy. And then here are some of the great global brands. And I love to say this, that in the world of recruiting, our state is judged by the brands that call Tennessee home. And what I mean by that is you have a lot of companies, when they're looking at states to either stand up a new facility or relocate or whatever, I think the first thing they look at is what other companies have gone before us and what other companies are wildly successful, what other companies carry great global brands. And this will give you anecdotally a sampling of some of the great global brands. And then when I think of the other major, we'll call it GDP driver in the world of advanced manufacturing, it's the automotive industry. And you can see across this map, this reflects the red dots reflect the number of companies that are in and a part of the automotive ecosystem. So as you guys probably know, we have 3 OEM, original equipment manufacturers. We have 1 in Spring Hill, which is the GM plant. We have 1 in Smyrna, which is the Nissan facility, and then 1 over in Chattanooga, Southeast Tennessee, and that is our friends at Volkswagen. And once you are able to successfully recruit a trophy OEM, the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 suppliers as a part of that ecosystem typically follow the large OEMs. And you can see where, if you look at today, 123,000 Tennesseans work for the automotive sector. This is a real driver of GDP across our state. And then you can see here are some of the brands here. Some of these brands you guys may recognize, other brands may be new to this audience. But I think so when I look at the companies that are automotive related, where I think we've been successful more recently is not only having the advanced manufacturing plant come to Tennessee, but their HQs are following. And I can look on this and look at where Bridgestone brought their North American headquarters from Chicago a couple of years ago. I think of Hankook, which is the 7th largest tire manufacturer from Korea. So they spent about $1 billion building a great new advanced plant in Clarksville. And then they brought their North American headquarters here. When you guys probably know Nissan moved their North American headquarters from California back in the 90s. And then more recently, Mitsubishi Motors, I think in their case, it's not just North America, it's all of the Americas. They moved their HQ, not their global, but their North American or American HQ from California. And then Nokian Tire is a great company over in Finland, and they built a brand new advanced manufacturing plant a couple of years in Ray County, and then they moved their U.S. headquarters here. So we're very proud of this ecosystem, and as you guys know, it means a lot to the GDP in our state. And then when you look out, this is, I think, an important, if we're talking about the automotive sector, you can see what's interesting about this slide is 9 of the 10 global OEMs have a presence in the Southeast. 9 of the 10 are multinationals, and then you have General Motors, but everybody else, the other 9 are international companies. And what's interesting about the other 9 is they've come to the Southeast for the same reasons that a lot of companies come to Tennessee, but also lack of labor union participation, quality of life. And what's really not displayed on this slide is just simply the quality of the work. And there's something to be said for the quality of the Southeastern worker. And that's not to say in the Northeast or out West, there aren't great manufacturing individuals that are professional, but the quality of the work here is outstanding. And then we've got the evolution of the electric vehicle. And that is what we think is going to be most transformational. When Governor Lee became our governor, the first thing he asked me to do for our department is focus on automotive, specifically the transformation from what they call the, I guess, internal combustion engine, ICE, versus the electric vehicle. And so as part of that conversation, we have spent a lot of time and energy making sure that our flag is firmly planted. And I can just draw on a couple of recent wins. Back in October, General Motors made the decision to build their first EV manufacturing plant outside of Michigan. And so they are spending about $2 billion to build a brand new EV plant in Spring Hill. And then I can think of Volkswagen in the last 2 years made the decision to spend about $800 million down in Chattanooga, hire another 1,000 people, and they're building their new EV platform in Chattanooga. And then we all know Nissan Leaf. That's the global, I think there are about 500,000 Leafs that are on the road today, and that those Leafs are manufactured in Smyrna. So again, we are doing everything we can to not only make sure that our flag is planted, but make sure that, because if you get the OEMs, you're usually going to get the suppliers that wrap around and support that ecosystem. Well, there you have it, guys. That probably is the data that really speaks volumes. When it comes to competing in the Southeast, I think the second data point would be the most important. Today, we garner about 40% of the market share across the Southeast when it comes to EV manufacturing of jobs and the investment. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what I've got for you this morning. Van and Khrys, thank you guys very much for the opportunity to spend a few minutes to talk about what we do. I think what I would like to just close with is to say thank you to Launch Tennessee. Your team is a great, valuable partner to ECD and allows us to not only hopefully recruit great companies, but also recruit startups. And Van, I know you're one of your missions is to, make sure that the state of Tennessee is the most startup-friendly state in the country. And I know you guys are very intentional about doing everything you can, because I can tell you as a former investment banker, a former private equity general partner, and a small business person, startups and early stage companies, that is the toughest road to hoe. So I have so much respect for what you guys are doing every day. And so anyway, from ECD, many thanks for the opportunity this morning to spend a few minutes with you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. We so value being the partner for ECD in startups, entrepreneurs, and helping build this ecosystem, and appreciate all the support and the great partnership we have with Tennessee ECD. And thank you for being here with us this morning.
Very good. Thank you. Have a great day.
Khrys, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Commissioner Rolfe, for those wonderful, wonderful comments, and really highlighting, Tennessee's leadership in mobility, and especially the electric vehicle market. Next, we are going to have, along those same lines, a presentation from David Salyers and Drew Frye. Really David Salyers is the commissioner for the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. He became so in January 2019 after serving as executive director of the West Tennessee River Basin Authority, where he served since 1997. A native of rural Western Kentucky and a resident of Madison County, Tennessee, Salyers led the West Tennessee River Basin Authority as an agency that set the standard for water resource management in West Tennessee. He received the 2016 Land Conservationist of the Year Award from the Tennessee Wildlife Federation. Congratulations for his wetlands restoration work and effective promotion of soil conservation practices with local farmers that improve the health of target watersheds. We're so excited to have Commissioner Salyers, and joining him is Drew Frye, who leads TVA's Electric Vehicle Transformative Innovation Initiative, where he coordinates program and partnership development with EV stakeholders and regional local power companies to remove the market barriers slowing down EV adoption in the Tennessee Valley. These initiatives include charging infrastructure availability, consumer awareness and education, supportive policy development, and vehicle availability and choice. Drew has served in TVA's research organization for 10 years with focuses on various grid edge technologies such as electric transportation. We're so excited to have him as well, and I will pass it over to Commissioner Salyers and Drew Frye.
Thanks, Khrys. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. And just let me begin by sharing my appreciation for Launch Tennessee. As a project-oriented engineer and geologist practicing for more than 3 decades, I value people and organizations that focus on problem solving. So let me begin by recognizing Launch Tennessee for supporting smart, innovative problem solvers. Also commend Van for creating and sustaining resources, relationships, and the resonance to advance Tennessee's entrepreneurial ecosystem. I'm very grateful we have this platform and connector powering the potential for breakthroughs that are going to benefit our economy and our environment. Commissioner Rolfe touched on Tennessee's quality of life during his keynote, and those remarks dovetail very nicely with the points I'll share with you this morning. I firmly believe that the quality of life we have in Tennessee requires a vibrant economy and a clean environment. It's not a belief that we can have both. It's a conviction that we must have both to be successful. And I'm pleased the initiative we're discussing this morning reflects how we achieve both. TDEC is committed to providing a cleaner and safer environment and is supportive of more efficient modes of transportation that can reduce emissions, improve air quality, and decrease transportation-related energy cost. On February 3rd, TDEC entered into a partnership with TVA, and we had a formal announcement, which is going to enable us to develop a statewide, publicly accessible EV fast charging network along interstates and select U.S. and state highways. And through this partnership, we seek to supplement existing public EV fast charging infrastructure to achieve what we're calling a Fast 50 designation for these corridors. These non-proprietary fast charging sites will be located no more than 50 miles apart along a given corridor or route. And the network will expand accessibility of critical EV charging for all Tennesseans, as well as regional travelers from high-density markets in urban areas to underserved markets in rural or economically distressed areas. This EV fast charging network is a major step forward in achieving TDEC's goals and making Tennessee a healthier and more resilient place to live, work, and play. And as noted by Commissioner Rolfe, Tennessee is proud to be #1 in the Southeast for EV manufacturing. As we continue to see more and more EVs enter the marketplace, Tennessee can leverage our strong automotive sector, our supply chain capabilities, and highly trained workforce to take advantage of economic development opportunities tied to EV manufacturing. And building on the work of ECD and Tennessee's EV manufacturing sector, this fast charging network and related efforts of the Drive Electric Tennessee Consortium will secure Tennessee's place as the Southeast EV epicenter. In Tennessee, we can breathe easy knowing that every county is currently in attainment for federal air quality standards. This infrastructure investment is going to help us maintain those accomplishments and make even more gains toward cleaner air by reducing transportation-related emissions over time. We support the automotive industry's shift to electric vehicles. By both spearheading efforts and working with partners on transportation electrification in the state, we can improve transportation sector efficiency and resiliency, as well as reduce vehicle emissions. The TDEC and TVA partnership is a great example of how agencies working together proactively on an issue that crosses multiple sectors and issues that impact us all in one way or another: the environment, our energy resources, our economy, tourism, manufacturing, and more. And speaking of those partnerships, the TDEC and TVA EV fast charging network builds off the work of Drive Electric Tennessee, a multi-stakeholder consortium that includes TDEC, TDOT, TVA, and many other key stakeholders such as local governments, OEMs, advocacy groups, and local power companies. In 2019, Drive Electric Tennessee conducted a statewide EV charging infrastructure needs assessment, which highlighted the condition of Tennessee's publicly available EV charging infrastructure. It identified geographic areas where new infrastructure should be placed to support a goal of 200,000 light-duty EVs in the state by 2028. And for context, approximately 11,000 light-duty EVs were registered in the state as of December 2020. The needs assessment found that charging infrastructure should be prioritized for highway corridors and rural tourism destinations to relieve range anxiety and to connect rural and urban areas, and that public investment may be required as opposed to using private investment only. One aspect when identifying the ideal corridors for this project was connecting communities across our state, from metro to rural, from small to big. We want Tennesseans to feel confident that no matter where they live, EV charging along their route can be possible. We're currently evaluating how our state parks could play a role in this endeavor. Our parks are major tourist attractions for Tennesseans, but also visitors from other states. Last year alone, we welcomed more than 34 million visitors, and our parks had an economic impact of nearly $2 billion in the state. We're looking at the possibility of installing EV chargers in and around our state parks. We could create pathways for sustainable tourism, introduce even more visitors to our parks, and encourage local spending by EV drivers. By working locally to advance affordable domestic transportation, fuels, energy efficient mobility systems, and other fuel saving technologies and practices, we can simultaneously reduce energy costs within the transportation sector, promote economic growth, and improve environmental quality. It's now my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Drew Frye with TVA. Drew is going to address additional details regarding the development of the fast charging network along interstates and major highways. I'd like to thank you again for the invitation to join you today. TDEC is very excited to continue to work alongside our fantastic partners, including the Department of Economic and Community Development and TVA, to achieve these benefits in our state, and we look forward to sharing our progress along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd like to introduce a little bit of TVA for those who don't know. TVA is part of the federal government, a utility company with an overarching mission to make the Tennessee Valley, a great place to live, work, and play. And TVA's mission is really kind of unchanged since we were created. We have to focus on the energy, the environment, the economic development, and the innovation within our region. And so you've kind of heard several aspects of that touched on by the previous commissioners. On the economic development side, we see a real growth in not just auto manufacturing, but the switch to electrification of the transportation sector. And that's the automakers that are making electric vehicles and all the parts none larger than the battery packs and the power electronics that go inside of these future cars. And so, we see this as fitting really well into the TVA mission. On the environment side, of course, driving electric vehicles instead of gasoline can be a benefit to the environment. But a lot of folks don't really understand the impact of that. We like to think of, the 200,000 EVs in Tennessee that Commissioner just referenced as a great goal and a very tangible goal. 200,000 EVs only represents about 4% of the cars, trucks, and SUVs that are currently on the road. But the benefits of those 200,000 EVs are really kind of staggering when you think about it. If 200,000 EVs are on the road instead of gas vehicles, that's almost 1 million metric tons of CO2 that would be saved from going into our region per year. And that is net of the electricity used to charge those vehicles. TVA delivers 55% carbon-free electricity now, and that number is only going to rise in the future, and the environmental benefits of EVs will continue to rise in the future. So we're super excited about this opportunity. In the introduction, you heard a couple of things that we see as kind of market barriers to EV adoption, whether that's the vehicles themselves, having electric vehicles available for consumers to choose. And we're super excited about Volkswagen and Nissan and General Motors and hopefully others still to come that will be producing electric vehicles in our region for our consumers. But also consumer awareness, educating the general public about the benefits and the opportunities of driving electric, down to the charging infrastructure. Just where will these vehicles charge? How will we reduce range anxiety for consumers that are considering electric vehicles? And to that end, Commissioner mentioned the partnership between TVA and TDEC, where we're going to focus on building that foundational public charging network. So giving consumers confidence when they go to buy their next vehicle to consider electric vehicle, giving those folks who drive EVs access to the entire Tennessee and our neighboring regions by building this foundational charging network. We have a long way to go, but we're excited about the opportunity. We're looking at placing fast chargers no further than 50 miles apart down the major roadways. Those are interstates and major U.S. and state highways. And this not only will give consumers confidence, but it also opens up Tennessee to additional funding from federal programs and other state level programs. So it's really kind of an engine that can sustain investment and bring more and more resources to the Tennessee Valley. So we're excited to partner with the state of Tennessee and the local power companies that distribute TVA electricity on this partnership. Now, thank you for your time. I guess I'll pass it back to Van or Khrys.
Here's my mic. Awesome. Thank you all so much. Really, really appreciate those comments and insights into this really, really exciting development. We're all really excited for what this will bring from an economic development standpoint, from Tennessee as a leader in technology and innovation. So really, really exciting times. Seeing no questions in the chat, but much gratitude to you both. You all can just cut your camera and your mic and we'll bring up the next group. Awesome. Thank you so much. And as we bring up our speakers for our VC and corporate innovation panel, I would like to introduce our moderator, Santosh Sankar. Santosh is a founding partner at Dynamo Ventures, a specialist investor in seed stage supply chain and mobility businesses. Santosh was named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2017. Big stuff, and is a graduate of Penn State University. He's also a vital ecosystem builder within Tennessee startup community. We're very, very happy to have him involved. He's very involved with CoLab, which is an entrepreneur center and Launch Tennessee network partner in Chattanooga. So as they come up, we've got Pierre and Suman up as well. So excited to have you guys. And I'll let Santosh do the introductions from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Khrys. And great to be here and moderate this panel between Pierre and Suman. Starting here, would love to introduce them. So Pierre joins us. He's an associate at Hyundai CRADLE, and at Hyundai, he's responsible for the strategic investment and partnership strategy, where he focuses on early stage businesses around AI, robotics, and cybersecurity. We have Suman here, who joins us as Director of Advanced Technology and Innovation at FedEx. And in her role, she is responsible for accelerating operational efficiencies as well as the customer experience by applying advanced technology, innovation, as well as business applications around autonomous vehicles and robotics. And really great to have you both here. I'm looking forward to what this conversation unfolds and offers our listeners. And to kind of kick it all off, right, I'd be curious, what's interesting you both as we think about the mobility technology landscape? And being roughly a quarter into the year, we're probably able to get a sense of what this year is going to bring as well relative to the subject matter.
Thank you, Santosh, for the introduction, and nice to meet you both. If that's okay, I can go ahead and first and talk to your first point that you brought up. So at FedEx, as many of you know, innovation is in our DNA. So we are always looking at reinventing as well as anticipating future trends and building future-ready strategies. So specifically to your question and looking at the mobility technology landscape, there are a couple of areas that are of great interest to us. One is autonomous technologies. So we are looking at applying autonomous technologies in all aspects of our business, within facilities, on the road, last mile, line haul. So every aspect of our operation, we're looking at autonomous technologies from safety and efficiency perspective, as well as for enhancing customer experience. Especially in the COVID world now, there is more and more inclination towards contactless delivery. So people have warmed up to the idea. So we're definitely looking at autonomous technologies. The second area of interest is electric vehicles, and as you may have seen in the news earlier this month, we announced our goal to be carbon neutral by 2040. So we are taking the goal of electrification and the associated technologies very seriously and investing over $2 billion in those technologies, and I can speak to that a little bit more if needed. So that's second area of interest. And third and finally, the area that we have been into, but now we have a renewed focus is data, renewed focus on data and the associated technologies, especially with advances in computing power, artificial intelligence, as well as deep learning technologies. We are looking at data and automation, again, for not only internal efficiencies, but also for customer experience in terms of providing visibility to our packages. And you've all seen the platform we've used for visibility for transporting, shipping COVID vaccines, which has been really state-of-the-art technologies, and our inbuilt sensor technologies as well. So those are the areas that are of great interest to FedEx.
Pierre, would love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the introduction. It's nice to meet you as well, Suman. So for Hyundai, there are a couple of big ones that are in front of us. One being hydrogen. In general, alternative fuels are sort of big in the automotive industry, of course. But for us, we have already made a very big commitment to electrification, and that is already sort of starting to bear fruit with new models being released, on a pretty regular basis. And we've recently released a model that has sort of an electric, what a lot of folks call the skateboard, but it's an electric platform that can be used to build out several vehicles. So we've already sort of made a commitment to electrification. and are now starting to look forward to hydrogen. Of course, one of the big things for us that we see, which was talked about just recently in the last panel on electrification, which is the infrastructure. So one of the things that we see as sort of an impediment to being able to build out really a fleet of hydrogen vehicles is really the hydrogen infrastructure. So, anything related to hydrogen and or the infrastructure associated therewith is very important to us, and is sort of one of the things that we're focusing on this year. Also, another big item for us, or for me personally also, is relating to what Suman mentioned around data. For us, data comes in many forms. If we are developing connected cars that are generating a lot of data that must be sort of placed somewhere and protected, looking at cybersecurity as it relates to those vehicles, those connected vehicles, the data associated with them, because our view is that having a strong cybersecurity posture can really inspire confidence in some of the new vehicle technologies and new services that OEMs and others on top of these newly autonomous or electrified vehicles, right? And to be able to inspire consumer confidence, you really need to be able to demonstrate that the data, all this data that's going to be generated from them, is going to be secure in our storehouses. So those are the two big items for us that I really see on the forefront for 2021.
So you both brought up kind of alternative fuels, right? And you both touched on electrification. And in the last 12 months or so, there's been a lot of headlines around electrification. And I would say the velocity of those headlines has only increased. And as somebody who may not be embedded in the industry, as aware of what's what would you tell people to pay attention to as talks around battery technology accelerate, an increase in electric vehicle purchases are put into the headlines, and even around infrastructure investment? How do we kind of get signal out of noise?
So I think Santosh, on that note, electrification is kind of at an inflection point now, where you will start to see the ramp up to scaling. Which is not to say there is still a lot of work to be done, especially with the charging infrastructure, as was mentioned in the previous presentation. But there is, I think, electrification is at a point where you will see more and more interest and more adoption, and the infrastructure will come along with it. And in our mind, the corporate players have to play a key role in advancing that cause and taking it further. And to that end, like I mentioned, we announced our goal to be carbon neutral by 2040, and there are actually a couple of different parts to that goal. We have different focus areas. One is the electric vehicles, like I mentioned, and for us, with our operations, with our scale, I mean, it's a huge endeavor. So the infrastructure requirements are also intense, but I think we can really take the cause further, especially with, we have over 200,000 motorized vehicles, aircrafts, almost 700 aircraft, as well as 5,000 plus operating facilities. So what we are really doing is, and we are in a position to be able to do it in terms of the range and charging infrastructure, because let's say our pickup and delivery fleet, they deliver during the day, but at night they are parked at our stations, at our facilities, where they can be charged, and if the infrastructure is put in place. So in other words, I think we are taking this is real from our perspective. We are taking it further and moving the whole space forward here. The two other areas in that our goal as well as strategy, in addition to electrification of our vehicles, is the carbon sequestration, as well as the investment in alternative fuels and other sustainable energy investments. So I want to talk a little bit about carbon sequestration, where we are going to be partnering with Yale University to research really taking the carbon out of the environment. So we we've talked about, carbon reduction of carbon in the environment, but one part of it is really sucking the carbon out of air, and there is a lot of research and innovation to be done in that area as well. So we'll be partnering and establishing a Yale Research Center to really look into that. So that's from FedEx perspective in terms of where electrification is going. We think it's real, and it's ready to be ramped up and scaled in the coming decade or so.
What's the Hyundai take,
Yeah.
Pierre?
Yeah. In terms of sort of the news and what to pay attention to, I feel like there's been sort of public market hypes, right? So we've seen in the public markets a lot of SPACs taking all the electric vehicle companies public. And, I've joked with friends that by the end of 2021, I don't think there will be any more private EV companies left that exist, right? They will all be public. So in that front, of course, that's, my view on that is it's everyone trying to find the next Tesla, right? In terms of and observing that, they can take on that front. However, I think the really important news to really be paying attention to as it relates to electric vehicles relates to, I've seen some deals happen where there are companies who are striking strategic deals with charging networks, right? Things that really have an impact on the infrastructure available to people in their local neighborhoods and environments. That's the type of news that I think is really important and impactful for folks who are maybe deciding whether or not they want an electric vehicle, or really trying to understand how this wave is going to affect them. When you start to see deals that really push infrastructure out into the world beyond sort of California where I am, or some other pockets of the US that have sort of very dense infrastructure, I think those are the things to pay attention to. I also think that, wherever there are incentives being, put in place, like if you see in the sort of state, California has a big, electric vehicle incentive or alternative fuel incentives. Those are headlines that, of course, people should be paying attention to, because there are some serious opportunities to sort of jump into alternative fuel vehicles and really make it, in some cases, more cost efficient than an internal combustion engine. So I think for folks paying attention to the news, those sorts of things that really affect them on the ground, I think, are the most.
Appreciate that. I'm going to shift gears here towards autonomous technologies, autonomous vehicles, right? And as an investor, I would say the last 4 or 5 years, there's a lot of activity, interest in the space. It feels like a good bit of that has dissipated, and I tend to think we might be sitting kind of in the Gartner trough of disillusionment. If you look at their hype cycle, I'd be curious, like, you both look at this from different vantage points. What do you both think? Like, where are we in this grand promise of self-driving vehicles?
Go ahead, Pierre.
I think that, if we are in this trough of disillusionment, I think it'll hopefully present some opportunities, right? As someone who focuses on investment, I would appreciate everyone else sort of not paying attention so I can go out and find the best opportunities. But I really think that, one of the things that I pay attention to as it relates to autonomous or any autonomous technologies at this point is, this sort of trough of disillusionment comes when sort of the output does not match the expectation. And I think that one of the things that's really important for companies that are focusing on AV technology is to essentially create a business model that can work today, right? And that means really they may need to have, in effect, have 2 different business models, one for today, one that solves an immediate need today that can work in, for example, a geofenced area, or work in a warehouse, work in a sort of a safe space for them to be, and then sort of have a long-term vision that allows them to ride the wave when we sort of come out of the trough of disillusionment and really start to ramp up, so that they've built up a body of work and some expertise in an area that allows them to hit that wave with, and really be effective in ways that others couldn't have because they didn't have the funding to be able to sort of sustain the development throughout this trough of disillusionment. So I'm really looking for opportunities where they have sort of a near-term business case and a long-term business case so that they can catch that wave when it comes.
Yeah, that's right. So Pierre, along the lines you mentioned, in terms of the disillusionment, the way we look at autonomous technologies is, I think it's at a point where it is it's coming from a lot of hype to gradual reality. And gradual is the key word here, because it's coming to reality. There is a lot of testing and development going on in the space, as well as a lot of consolidation. I think in the last 1 year, we have really seen consolidation of players in terms of, not just in terms of M&A activity, but also in terms of the pairings between OEMs and the technology players. So there's been a lot of consolidation in this space, and I think the players have realized that it is going to take quite some time to really get to a stage where we have level 4 or level 5 type of autonomous technologies where a machine or a virtual driver can do everything that a human driver can do. So it's going to take a while, but we do think that it is coming to gradual reality. And the reason we think that way is because of a couple of key developments in the AV space in the last, I would say, two years or so. One is, again, I think we had earlier talked about, is the rapid advancement of the sensors as well as the computation power and AI ML technologies. Now with the advancement of technology, it is much easier, or it is possible to analyze, to store, process, and analyze huge amounts of data, which was not possible a few years ago. Autonomous technologies is one space where that is extremely important. So with those advances in AI, ML, as well as the processing power, the autonomous technologies are advancing slowly in that direction. The second development, I think, that has kind of impacted the pace of AV development is, and now there is more of OEM participation along with the technology players. And that's very critical because OEMs are the ones that are really working now, have started working on the redundancy vehicle base, which is really important from safety perspective. For autonomous technologies. And thirdly and finally is, I think there is more and more awareness from public, especially with COVID, as well as more and more involvement from regulatory bodies in the early stages, or I would say in the development stages of the autonomous technologies, which is going to be crucial. So we really think that it is coming to a little bit of gradual reality. Still, any kind of scalability is several years away, but at the same time, I think it's going in that direction. And we are really looking at it again from safety perspective, as well as from the internal efficiencies perspective.
Sure. I'd be curious. You both certainly have a line too. Like this will happen. It'll just take time to develop, right? And there's a natural development curve here that we just need to be willing to accept. But alongside that, there's also a substantial amount of regulatory work that also needs to occur across the US. And I'd be curious, how can the regulatory bodies, right? In our audience, we have industry, investment, regulator coming together around these topics. How might the regulator be proactive in enabling autonomy, knowing that there are several years before we can even get close to level 4, let alone level 5?
I mean, one of the things that is really interesting to me is that here in California, there are some facilities that that are sort of run by, I believe it's AAA, that sort of have a safe space for autonomous vehicles to run around in, real world like conditions, and for people to come and observe, right? So, I think having facilities like that allows regulators hopefully to be able to see data that shows them what are the opportunities and what are sort of the weaknesses that they need to be cognizant of. I also think it's really incumbent upon the companies themselves to be establishing relationships with regulators, to really just be able to push their, to be able to put forth what are the opportunities that they see, so that the regulators sort of have a complete picture of what the issues are around autonomous technology. And I think the other thing is, regulators need to sort of have a future-looking perspective to really be able to just think through where there might be opportunities to allow autonomous technology to operate even today in places where there is relatively low risk, but there could be sort of big upside opportunities for economic development.
Yeah, and I completely agree with Pierre on all the points that he mentioned, and just to kind of focus on that, it's crucial for regulatory bodies to be involved in this stage of development, to be really able to see the data that is needed to get the comfort level as well as the safety of these vehicles, because safety is paramount going to be paramount for these technologies. And secondly, also in terms of what are the real key measures to be able to look at and say, yes, there is going to be comfort level or there are advances in autonomous technologies. And to second point that Pierre mentioned is that companies also have to work collaboratively with the regulatory bodies. So for example, last year FedEx and Wing launched the testing of drone testing operations, and it was the whole process and the selection was done by FAA, the Federal Aviation Authority. So we worked very closely with FAA to be able to test those drone deliveries in an airport setting. So that's an example where we are working very closely with the regulatory bodies in terms of testing these technologies and looking at what more is needed in terms of development as well as the safety perspective.
Appreciate that. So we have a few minutes left here, and I know we have some questions that have popped up in the chat, and feel free, either of you, to jump on these. But first question here from Milt would be, what is the best way for entrepreneurs, investors to approach either of your organizations in an effort to either discuss investment or some type of a partnership? Where would you direct them?
Yeah, so I can speak from FedEx perspective. So we have departments in FedEx for assessing the investment opportunities for startups. So they are all vetted through that department. For autonomous technologies, as well as some other innovative vehicle technologies, my group gets involved in terms of talking to the startups as well as the newly innovated companies. So there is a process established in FedEx to be able to look at these investment opportunities as well as the engagement with the startups.
For Hyundai, so I sit on a team that focuses on investments and partnerships. So, simply put, you can email me, and I'm happy to post my email publicly so that folks can contact me. But what I would say is, in doing so, I think what companies should understand when they approach, myself or really any other corporate venture capital is sort of a lot of for based investors. So that means we're looking for opportunities to, in addition to making an investment, sort of create a partnership. And I think that a lot of smaller companies come in not really understanding where they fit in the value chain in which we fit, right? So the question to ask yourself when presenting, for represent sort of, and asking myself as a smaller company is, do I really fit tier one supplier, or direct to consumer type of a play where there may be some benefit that's offered to the OEM, but the real primary benefit is to another party. So just really understanding the dynamics around the business and the way that your business is structured to understand who is the best partner. Because while it may be related to mobility in some sense, it may not be that an OEM is the best partner. So really just thinking that through, and sort of when you present to OEMs or whomever else, really just helping to clearly illustrate.
Sure. Well, with that, I know we are at time here with our panel, so appreciate you both joining us, Pierre, Suman. We'll hand it back over to Khrys to take over.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. That was absolutely amazing. Thank you, Santosh, for moderating that so expertly. As we move into our startup CEO panel, we wanted to get you guys a flavor of some of the companies around the state, around the Southeast, and around the country who are working in this industry, and some of the opportunities that exist there. So as they come up, I'd like to introduce Tom Rogers, who will moderate this panel for us. Tom assumed the leadership of the UT Research Park at Cherokee Farm in March 2019, where he is focused on accelerating connections and collaborations between private companies and the University of Tennessee and the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Tom has spent his entire career in various economic development and entrepreneurial leadership roles in Tennessee. He served most recently as the Director of Industrial Partnerships and Economic Development at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And prior to that, as the founder and CEO of Technology 2020, a public-private partnership focused on building a regional entrepreneurial support system. Tom has also worked as the executive director of the Tennessee Technology Development Corporation, now Launch Tennessee, as president of the Oak Ridge Chamber of Commerce, and began his career at TVA in the areas of economic development and strategic planning. So full circle moment here. He also serves as an adjunct assistant professor with UT's Bredesen Center, teaching entrepreneurship to Ph.D. students. So perfect person to lead this panel, and I will let him introduce our panelists.
Khrys, thank you. I appreciate the introduction. And we've got an opportunity here in about 30 minutes to give you a really unique flavor of the quality entrepreneurs we have in the state around mobility, around electrification, around transportation. And so we're blessed to have 4 speakers today in kind of a lightning round format. I'm going to briefly introduce all 4 of them, and then we'll go in alphabetical order to let them share some comments. Don DeRosa, Don, you want to wave? Is the Chief Executive Officer at Eonics. He received his Ph.D. in nanoscience from the College of Nanoscale Science and Engineering at the University of Albany. He's a former ORNL Innovation Crossroads Entrepreneurial Fellow and has managed energy storage projects for the Department of Energy, National Science Foundation, NYSERDA, the U.S. Army, and the U.S. Air Force. Recently, Don has led the development of the first commercially viable, non-flammable lithium-ion battery chemistry at the Spark Innovation Center at the UT Research Park. Dr. Sanjiv Malhotra has had a distinguished career spanning 25 years as a founder and CEO of 2 startups, as an investor with a leading venture capital firm, and as a senior executive at the U.S. Department of Energy. He is now CEO of Sparkz, a startup he founded in 2019 that is seeking to commercialize and manufacture cells for lithium batteries. This is based on innovation being jointly developed with ORNL. Sanjiv holds both a Ph.D. in chemical engineering and an MBA. He's worked as a postdoc fellow at the renowned Lawrence Berkeley National Lab on electrochemical energy storage systems. He's authored 7 patents and 40+ publications in various fields of energy storage and materials. Erica Plybeah, did I pronounce your name correctly, Eric? Is it Plybeah? Plybeah, thank you, is a clinical informatics consultant turned technology entrepreneur. With over a decade of experience in health information technology, acute patient care, pharmacy, and oncology. After working with multiple health and noticing the various social barriers that exist, she founded MedHaul, an end-to-end platform for scheduling special needs transportation. Erica is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she earned a bachelor's degree in biology. She is a certified ICS-2 healthcare information security privacy practitioner and a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. Jay Rogers is the CEO and co-founder of LM Industries, a technology company that designs, builds, and sells vehicles and other high technology products in partnership with other global manufacturers. LM Industries is the first company to utilize direct digital manufacturing, as evidenced when it debuted the world's first 3D printed car, the Straddy, in September of 2014 in partnership with ORNL. Currently, the company is working on its latest creation, Ollie, an urban speed cognitive electric shuttle. Jay is a graduate of Princeton University's Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs and holds an MBA from the Harvard Business School. So we've got a great panel. They've got some great ideas and new entrepreneurial journeys. And Don, would you please start and give us a little bit of flavor of what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tom. Eonics has developed a high throughput, semi-automated approach to materials design for lithium-ion batteries. A major hurdle to developing new materials for batteries is the time and cost that it takes to introduce new electrodes or electrolytes that improve performance for different markets. At Oak Ridge National Lab, with funding from the Department of Energy, we developed a system that significantly reduces the cost and time to look at a material, evaluate it, iterate, and develop a product. Most recently, with funding from the Department of Defense, over the last 6 months, we developed a non-flammable, high-temperature lithium-ion battery using this technology, this approach. In part at the UT Research Park that you know pretty well, Tom, as the director. We essentially have a platform technology to develop materials that are drop-in compatible with lithium-ion batteries that are manufactured today. And we're developing material products for market-specific applications to hit different energy storage needs. In the short term, we have this non-flammable high-temperature battery that has some obvious defense market applications as well as grid storage where we can address some cost drivers. But long term, we have a focus on mobility, specifically electric vehicles, which is definitely where the market is trending. And I can certainly say that we're excited to be in this region in Tennessee. We're located in Knoxville specifically. We moved here from New York State. And it was a little bit surprising for us at first, but I think we're very happy to be in this region. As the commissioner touched upon earlier during the keynote, and as essentially every section is mentioned, Tennessee has a really robust electric vehicle ecosystem that's growing. And that's been very beneficial for us as we've started to grow in the region as well. So the ecosystem that's being cultivated here in terms of available talent and collaborators to work with in the space is exciting for us as we continue to develop new products with our platform technology. I'll keep it pretty brief and open for questions, but feel free to connect with me after as well. Anybody interested in advancing their lithium-ion battery offerings.
Great, thanks, Don. Sanjiv, would you share your journey with Sparkz, please?
Sure, Tom. Thanks a lot for the introduction, and it's been a great session listening to all the speakers, first the commissioners and then the investor panels. So when we look at lithium batteries, I can tell you that essentially, Steve Jobs did us a favor. He has made lithium-ion batteries an integral part of everyone's life with iPhones and iPads and whatever other device that one has. And hardly would anyone ever ask the question about challenges with batteries when it comes to consumer electronics. With electric mobility, that's a very different ballgame. Every time I tell people that, yes, I have moved away from fuel cells, having started 2 fuel cell companies, now to starting Sparkz, a lithium-ion battery company, the question is, when do you think electric vehicles are going to become mainstream? And always invariably they answer the question themselves, the people who ask me this question. Well, I think when you address the challenges with lithium-ion battery, I think electric vehicles will become mainstream. So it's almost becoming like a chicken and egg kind of a story that one needs to address the challenges with lithium-ion battery, and then you have mainstream electric mobility. So the question I ask myself is, what are the challenges with lithium-ion batteries? And I think after a lot of thinking and researching, even during my days at the Department of Energy, heading the investment center there, the answer was that there are 2 challenges that one can think about. One is the lack of sustainability in the supply chain for lithium-ion batteries. And the second one is sort of associated with that. That's the cost. When you do not have a very robust and sustainable supply chain, the cost is impacted. So the real problem child here is actually cobalt. Cobalt is one of the elements used in lithium-ion batteries. In fact, cobalt is used in almost about 65 to 70% of the batteries, lithium-ion batteries that are deployed worldwide. And when we talk about sustainability and cost challenges with cobalt, essentially there are 3 challenges. The first one is supply and demand. Today, about 150,000 to 170,000 metric tons of cobalt are mined per year. And the way demand is going or growing for electric mobility, there was a recent study, I've been there, a lot of studies, but a very recent study by MIT and UC Berkeley, where they talk about that by 2030, the demand is going to be 3 times the supply. The demand is going to be somewhere between 350,000 to 450,000 metric ton. And the supply, as I said, is between 150 to 170,000 metric ton. So that's one challenge. The second challenge is the human cost associated with cobalt mining. Almost 2/3 of cobalt is found in DRC, or the Democratic Republic of Congo. And essentially what you see there is that people have dug up these mines, these small mines, like 3 feet wide mines going about 50, 60 feet into the ground to take cobalt out. And how do they do that? A human body cannot fit in, a human male or a female cannot fit in. They send children to do that. And there have been a lot of incidents of deaths of these kids who have been stuck in these mines. So the human cost is just, it's very, very tragic how we are dependent on something like cobalt that essentially relates to so many deaths and so many accidents. The third is the cost. Back in 2015, 2016 timeframe, just before electric vehicles started becoming mainstream thanks to Tesla, the cost of cobalt was about $10,000 a metric ton. Come 2017, it ramped up all the way to $100,000 a metric ton. And then it sort of settled down, not at $10,000, but at $50,000 a metric ton. So these 3 challenges, essentially the human cost, the actual cost, and the supply and demand of cobalt has led to the establishing of Sparkz. And what we are doing, our solution is that we have partnered with Oak Ridge National Labs. I went and talked to about, I would say, half a dozen or so labs. And Tom, you know that because I was in touch with you when I was starting Sparkz. Talk to any and every lab and a lot of universities also to find a solution that could address this challenge with cobalt, and found that at Oak Ridge National Labs. And the net result of this technology is that it is not only cobalt free, but it gives us a much higher energy density. And what does that relate to is much higher range for electric vehicles. Secondly, it's capable of extreme fast charging. We are not talking 1 hour, 2 hours. We're talking 15 to 20 minutes from 0 to 100% without any compromise on the life of the lithium-ion battery. The third is the safety. The safety is significantly enhanced with this battery. And the fourth one is cost. The cost, by eliminating cobalt and by other aspects of engineering or electrode engineering, the cost is reduced by almost about 30%. So this is the solution that we found with at Oak Ridge National Labs, and Oak Ridge and Sparkz have secured 2 funding grants from DOE. And the idea is that Oak Ridge is doing the R&D and Sparkz is doing the scale up, the commercialization, and taking the product into the market, as well as setting up the manufacturing for this cathode material or one of the electrodes in the lithium-ion battery. In terms of the market, our first market is intralogistics, essentially powering forklifts that are used in distribution centers or in production facilities, as well as delivery vans. We heard the speaker from FedEx, I believe, Suman, talk about the last mile delivery van. So that's our first market, basically intralogistics and material handling. The second one is automotive. And then the third one is energy storage, and not in any particular order. And with all these 3 markets, we currently have signed partnerships with leading OEMs from across the world. So we already have a partner in the form of a company called Keynote. That's our partner for intralogistics, for material handling and the last mile delivery vans. And for energy storage, we are about to sign a multi-year contract converting into multiple gigawatt hours of supply from our side to our OEM partner for energy storage application. And then for automotive, we are working with 2 leading global auto manufacturers. And the idea essentially is that we are rushing to set up our first gigafactory and very eagerly and very diligently exploring the possibility of doing so in Eastern Tennessee. And by the way, I should not forget to mention that we were a California company. I'm based in California, and so are a couple of my other team members, but we have moved to Tennessee. So the idea is we are setting up our R&D facility there. And when, Tom, you're ready with Innovation South over at Cherokee Farms, we want to be the first tenant with our engineering and scale-up center. And by early 2023, we should have our first gigafactory for producing these cathode materials as well as cells. So that essentially is our story, folks.
It's a fantastic story, Sanjiv. Thank you. We're hopeful that both Sparkz and Eonics will be moving into this new Innovation South development that we're working on right now. So you can raise each other to be first. That would be just fine with me.
Yep, looking forward to be neighbors.
Fantastic. Erica, please share your journey about MedHaul.
Sure. So as we mentioned, I'm Erica Plybeah, founder of MedHaul, and we believe that everyone deserves safe, reliable, and efficient transportation to care, regardless of any special or unique needs that these patients might have. I'm also happy to announce that we've recently been certified as a B Corporation, showing our commitment to people, planet, in addition to profit. And so I think there are about 4 of us in Tennessee now that are certified B Corps, but our technology helps healthcare providers find and book rides for patients with special needs, such as wheelchair, stretcher, or patients that require door-through-door transport. Our solution specifically targets vulnerable communities, and what that means for us are communities with higher rates of chronic illnesses, elderly patients, or low-income communities. So we're really passionate about bringing innovation to and building in communities that are often overlooked. So MedHaul sort of sits as the liaison in the middle between healthcare providers and transportation companies. We don't own any vehicles. We build a network of specialized transportation providers who have wheelchair and stretcher accessible vans. We have sort of a multi-value prop or benefits for all of the users that are involved within our platform. So for the healthcare providers, we offer streamlined, cost-effective, data-driven transportation resources. For patients, they have reliable access to care. And for our transportation providers, we really wanted to focus on increased capacity and revenue for them by giving them fair rates for their services and also educational resources to help them improve their business acumen. There are a little bit over 400 of these small specialized transportation companies in the state of Tennessee. They have fleet sizes ranging from anywhere from 2 vehicles to over 1,000 vehicles, giving us a pretty robust potential network to choose from. And so the healthcare and transportation ecosystem in Tennessee has been pretty rich for us as well. We were founded in 2017, but we officially launched in 2019. And we were actually, we launched our company as a part of the FedEx Logistics Innovation Accelerator, which was based in Memphis, Tennessee, and it was a partnership with Epicenter and Starco. So that was a great experience for us because myself and my early team all came from the healthcare and software engineering space. But our primary vision is to marry the best of logistics with healthcare, and we believe that we can only do that in the state of Tennessee. As far as healthcare is concerned and why we're so focused on the South, just looking specifically at Tennessee, about 20% of the population is covered by Medicaid, about 16% is disabled, 20% is covered by Medicare, and close to 20% of the population is over 65 and up. So there are great needs for our services right now, but even looking into the future, when we see millennials becoming the largest group of caregivers, they'll be looking for more innovative solutions to take care of their parents or family members that may have issues with accessing not only care, but traditional everyday activities like going to the gym or going to the grocery store. So we're looking at those opportunities as well. And we're also looking at potential opportunities with employers also. So working or partnering with employers that are well known for being disabled friendly or hiring those with special needs, giving them a more innovative solution to get to work is also something that we're looking into as well. So we're really excited to be here. We are pretty early, as I mentioned before. We were founded in 2017, launched in 2019. We're also excited to announce that we recently closed our first seed round of funding, our first institutional round of funding. We raised a little bit over 1.2 million. And we're very excited that our lead investor is Nova Memphis, so based right here in Tennessee. And most of our investors are either in the social impact space or healthcare space. So we are very excited to be here. So thanks for having us.
Erica, thanks for sharing your vision. It's really inspiring. Meant a lot to me. So, Brother Rogers, it's good to see you again.
Tom, great to see you, and thanks to everybody on the panel. We have been so honored to be part of the ecosystem of businesses in the mobility economy in Tennessee. In May of 2014, we opened our doors around about the time that we were working on the world's first 3D printed car, as Tom mentioned, thankfully, with the great research that had been done to date at the Oak Ridge National Lab. Today, we have evolved that capability into what is known as Ollie, which is our second generation product that is a fully 3D printed level 4 electric vehicle, level 4 autonomous vehicle. And so we could not have done it without Tom, your help, and all of the team at the manufacturing demonstration facility and the Oak Ridge National Lab. And we continue in our partnership both with UT and also with the Institute for Advanced Composites Manufacturing, and bringing new vehicles and new technology within those vehicles, most importantly, to people who require accessibility is our goal and our mission. And making mobility safe and accessible for all is really what Ollie is about. And so we're just blessed to have found such an ecosystem. Moving the primary microfactory to within 1,000 meters of the manufacturing demonstration facility has been the greatest move we ever made. And aligning with the teams at UT and continuing to grow from that ecosystem and resource that is world-class there has been exceptional. Most recently, we've hired one of the graduates from UT who there hasn't been a single person that we've hired from that ecosystem that hasn't exceeded and excelled beyond our expectations. So thanks for having me on the panel. Thank you for everything that Tennessee has done for us, and I'm looking forward to it. I regret that I have a very hard stop at 1 p.m. And so I'm sorry that we were so close on time. I shouldn't have backed up my call, but I'll turn it back over to you, Tom.
Great. Jay, it's good to see you again. Hope to see you again soon.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So for the audience, I think it's really interesting that all four of our panelists have leveraged support infrastructure across the state. So Eric has done a great job of being involved with the Epicenter and the FedEx Institute and our friends in Inova Memphis to help get her company started. Eonics, Sparkz, LM Industries have all worked with Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the University of Tennessee. So for those other startups out here, I would encourage you as you continue on your journey, reach out to those entrepreneurial support institutions and let them help you with your journey. So with that, and due to Jay's hard stop at 1 o'clock, we magically got this bus back on track. So Khrys, we'll turn it back over to you. And thank you to the panelists. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, well, and hey, before you do, we do have one question from the audience, and thank you so much, Jay, for sticking around. But for Sparkz, are you using nickel or metal hydroxides? Any competition with Tesla?
So the technology is using nickel, and it's not a competition, but I would say we could be and would be a supplier to Tesla.
Awesome. Any other questions from the audience? Hearing none, thank you, or seeing none rather. Thank you all so much, and thank you, Tom, for expertly moderating this panel. And do have to shout out Erica Plybeah and MedHaul, which is also a Launch Tennessee portfolio company.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And with that, that concludes our formal programming for this edition of the Southeast Capital Call. We really appreciate everyone for joining. Please stick around for networking. We will have the space open for another half hour or so. So certainly enjoy, get to meet some other folks from around the Southeast and in some cases around the country. We thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. And keep your eyes out and peeled for news about 3686 coming very soon.